It's the Awake Space Astrology Podcast. I'm Laurie Rivers, your host, here to help you with some inspiration to get those aspirations out into the world. Well, we got another week. It's 2025, and we can sit here and wring our hands and feel freaked out. Or we can just go, it's 2025, and here's how I'm going to move through it. So that's where we're at. We got the full moon in Aries happening, and as per my TikTok on Sunday, which is a voiceover, I think you'd find it very funny. But basically, if you don't start shit, there won't be no shit. And that's what the Aries full moon has to say. We'll talk about that. Remember, if you're a patron, you get the patron only podcast, and I'll do a full moon run through for deep dives. Oh, well, it's the 6th of October. It's the 6th of October today, and we've already lived through another decade. Just a heads up, one of my great frustrations is people's lack of knowledge of civics. And I didn't learn it in school. I had the benefit of having civil servants in my family, and I grew up being part of things. And I realized that was a great privilege. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about a side project I'm doing that you may be interested in. And you could share it with people who don't necessarily agree with you eye to eye on like partisan issues. People confuse partisanship and politics all the time. And partisan is, when you're dealing with a philosophy or a political party. The political and civic side of things is literally just how stuff works and how you're an active participant. So I'm trying to keep this as nonpartisan as possible. There'll be one tiny episode at the beginning of every week that gives you an action step on being involved. And then there's a history segment. That one might cause more problems. But there's a history segment at the end of the week. So there's 2 little 15-minute tops episodes that get you a little bit further than Schoolhouse Rock. So I'll talk about that a little bit more and why I'm doing it in my monologue. But anyway, it is another action-packed week as Mars in Scorpio continues moving forward, eventually making a trine with Jupiter and a trine with Saturn. And we'll talk about what that means. Yeah, there's stuff happening in the world. But on an individual level, it can be a really creative time. It can be an inspiring time. And there is good news out in the world, even if what's in the headlines doesn't show that. Remember, that is a patron-only benefit. I'll talk a little bit about it in the next segment. Speaking of patrons sponsor this podcast. That's why it's ad-free. I take no commercial sponsorships. It is 100% listener supported. I don't know about you, but I think that's really cool. And if you want to become a patron, you can check out the show notes. All right, grab your tea, get your coffee, get your matcha, get your H2O, get your Red Bull or your Monster, whatever you're drinking. I don't do energy drinks, but if you're drinking those, I drink coffee, okay? But if you're drinking those, grab that. And whether we're going to work, folding towels, doing the hot girl walk, the hot guy walk, taking the kids to school, or starting to shop for spooky season, we'll do it together. All right, perfect parking, safety bubbles all around you. Let's get on with the show. Oh my goodness, oh my goodness, oh my goodness, what a week to come. So we got the full moon in Aries. That should be spicy and interesting. But here's the deal. Our consciousness is up to us. And one of the things I want to cover this week is talking about resistance. Last week, I talked about the alt-right pipeline and love and light and how things get misused and misinterpreted. And this week, we're going to talk about resistance. And I'm not talking about political resistance. I'm talking about the inner resistance we feel to dealing with reality, dealing with our healing processes, and what healing can look like. Because I think a lot of times people think healing means there's no pain or discomfort, and that's not necessarily true when we're going through the process. And so we'll talk a little bit about that this week. So for me, whenever I feel resistance come up, like an irritation, right? Like I get annoyed, and people not realizing how our system works kind of drives me nuts. Some of you may know I I have a subset of a political science degree. I studied international relations. I specialized in U.S. Middle East policy. Yeah, I've been living in a particular hell for a long time. But anyway, because most of that policy has not been good. However, when it comes to American civics, I didn't study that. I lived it. You know, my dad was a shop steward for the union. He was a firefighter, which meant he was a public servant. My grandmother was a manager for Adult and Family Services, which is now, I believe, the Department of Health and Human Services in Oregon. And I would listen to them argue between management and labor issues. My dad was very active in campaigning for county commissioners because his fire department wasn't a city department. It was a county department. And so his district, he needed good support from county commissioners. And this was dinner table talk. And I had the privilege of learning that. But I can be really, really frustrated when people are like, well, I voted and it didn't matter. I'm like, well, voting is a cornerstone of democracy, but it's not the only part. And so with my own frustration, which can be distracting from my work, because I too can hit the scrolling a little hard and go, oh my God, why don't they understand? And Matilda was like tired of listening to me. If you guys know who the real medium Matilda is, she's my friend. And we were talking one night and she said, Laurie, just start the podcast already. And so she gave me a name. And I decided to use it because in our conversations, we are both so attuned to our guidance that we deliver each other messages all the time. And she called it the American Blueprint. And I went, that is the perfect name because we are the blueprint. So to manage my own resistance at the lack of education in civics, I've started a new podcast. The first episode is coming out on Tuesday. And then there'll be one episode a week that's 15 minutes long. That's just about civics, explaining civics and your role in that with one action step you can take. Very bite-sized pieces, nothing wholly overwhelming and way beyond making a call or using the 5 Calls app, but understanding truly what you can contribute to the process. And then the second part, and this may be the one that pisses people off because I use words like inclusion, is a history lesson on how our government was formed. Okay. And not just, a plucky band of rebels fighting the crown, but understanding the intricacies of the decision making. And again, it's 15-minute bites, and that means there's going to lack some nuance. All right. But we're going a little bit further than Schoolhouse Rock on that. And then I can concentrate on the awake space because I won't be sitting there going, my God, why don't people understand this? And that's something we can do in our lives. Our spiritual walk is not separate from our physical walk. Okay. Just like we shouldn't be living a physical lifetime worried about our afterlife. Worry about the physical life, because if you do well in the physical life, you're pretty guaranteed a good spot in the afterlife if that's something you believe, right? By their fruits, you shall know them, right? Drives me nuts. So you can tell when somebody or yourself is having a moment of resistance. Notice how my tone will change between when I'm tuned in and really connected to my higher self and my guidance, and when I'm just being Laurie, physical person in the world, and when I'm frustrated. My body posture changes, my tone of expression changes, how I speak changes, my hand gestures. I'll show tension patterns, and so do you. And when we're faced with things that we are unable to accept, unwilling to accept, we will get tension patterns. Okay. That doesn't help us unless we take action. Okay. That tension and the cortisol and the adrenaline rushes, that's to help keep us safe from physical attack. And our brain really doesn't know the difference between an actual physical attack, like a bear or a cougar chasing us, or dealing with some kind of assailant coming at us, and news headlines. Okay. The news headlines, when you're reading them, they're not attacking you, but it feels like it. And that's why we want to limit our exposure, dip in, dip out. Because if you're like me, I woke up the other day and I made the mistake of checking the news before I had my coffee. I normally have a ban on that, but I don't know. I wasn't thinking straight. And it was the day of the speech to the 800 generals, or flag officers, I should say. Oh, Lord, have mercy. It did not start my day off well. But I also started to laugh because I thought, well, that was the dumbest move I've ever seen. Really, you thought you were doing something there, did ya? But I had to work to wrangle my consciousness. The other thing I notice, I'm going to take some deep breaths, when it comes to resistance is a lot of people want to over-explain themselves, because once we become trauma-informed, once we become aware of the impact of past harms and hurts or current harms and hurts, we want to explain our own reactivity by saying, hey, this thing happened to me, blah, blah, blah. And honestly, that's an inside job. That's not anybody else's. And I'm not saying put the skeletons in the closet, so don't think I'm going there, because I'm not. But when we are experiencing our resistance in real time, we don't owe anybody an explanation as to why that happened. Okay? We don't. We just don't. We don't have to say, oh, I get scared because I got yelled at a lot as a kid. Because if you're an adult, I'm not talking about if you're a teenager, or you're in your very early 20s, it can be helpful to have those conversations. But if you're, older, you don't have to keep telling the trauma story. It doesn't help you move through the resistance. It's enough to become aware and then take action. Because what do we say in the mystery school, right? With the Annie process. The power's in the noticing, the perfection's in the correction. I notice I do this thing. Okay, let me correct it. Okay, let me correct it. I used to do the same damn thing. So don't think I haven't. I speak from experience. Okay, I used to want to explain myself because we want people to understand us, right? But guess what? The only person who is supposed to understand you is you. That's it. That's it. That's why I love teaching astrology. It's not about understanding other people. It's about understanding you. You get you sorted, then you can move on to other people. But what happens is everybody wants to deflect and project and fix the other guy. Because if they just stop doing that thing, then we'd all be okay. Whoops. So, speaking of, last week's lecture on the astrology of the child was just so lovely. This week, in astrology of the child, because it's a 3-part lecture series, I'm talking about child development and astrology and how to look at it through a more neutral lens, right? Just so you can understand what's going on, which is exciting because it really mirrors some of the things like Erickson's developmental phases, things like that. So that's fun. Almost forgot to talk about this. What the heck? Why'd you let me? No, I'm kidding. Matilda and me Speaking of Matilda, we are doing charts and channeling on October 11th. There's still time to sign up. The code is expired, so I'm sorry, there's no special savings. However, it is an outstanding event. Plan for multiple hours as we do our thing, because we're looking at 2026 together. We do this individually, and then when we get together, boy, we're a powerhouse. So I've already done my 2026 year ahead back in June around the solstice. I do that every single year, and then I do a follow-up in December. What Matilda and I are doing is joining forces, because both of our abilities get amplified when we're together. And we're going to give you not only what we see happening, but I insisted, because I'm like, I feel so bad just constantly giving bad news. I need to give some steps to empower people, because otherwise I just sit there going, I can't do this to people. You know, it's hard enough for me to live through it and have the knowledge. And I have developed skills and tools to manage having a lot of advanced knowledge of unpleasant things. Most people don't have that, and I feel bad. So this year I started putting in not just at the end on how to prepare, but what to do for month by month preparation. So we'll give a little bit of that. So there's that. How exciting. Of course, we'll be looking around the globe, because we have international audiences. Not everything is about the United States, although we're certainly popping off, aren't we? So that's what we've got going on. You can find the link to sign up for that in the show notes. Okay, make sure you go and do it. We've got limited space, and it's filling up fast. And we always go many hours. We never keep it to 90 minutes. Are you kidding? We can't even get through one region of the world in 90 minutes. But we're also funny. And I'm dedicated to keeping it light, because I can't handle any more heavy stuff either. So that resistance pattern in the body where you just feel, oh, do I have to? So there's ways and tools that we can develop. And this is a good time to do it with Mars in Scorpio, Jupiter in Cancer, Saturn in Pisces, retrograde. This is all a good time to work on our internal systems. Okay, our internal systems, and not just the internal systems work, the different parts of self, but recognizing our physical resistance and doing some somatic work around that. I'm so glad it's popular now, because back in the late 90s, when I was introduced to it, most people didn't know what I was talking about. So it's nice to know that people do. So there's that. Again, I've linked everything up in the show notes, and you'll have to check out in the Patreon. I think I'm going to just put a free post up, a public post, to announce the American Blueprint first episode going out this week. And I look forward to supporting our American audience with action steps and tools, and our international audience with an understanding of how our government in the United States actually is working. And when I said the Constitution holds, it holds by a thread, but it holds, I meant that. That's not trying to give you false hope. It does hold, and it is still holding. People can say things, but it doesn't make it a truism. It doesn't make, people can say whatever they want. They can say, we're going to order X, Y, and Z, but it may not hold. That what they say isn't necessarily a legal order. And so there are guardrails. They're getting shaky, but they're there. And each one of us gets to contribute to the process. And that's what I'm hoping to give you there. Again, I'm keeping it nonpartisan. I believe every single citizen has the right to participate, whether I agree with them or not. That's a cornerstone of American government. And yes, there has been shitty history. And it has not always been fair, and it's not the fairy tale we got taught in elementary school, but it was designed to be an elastic system, a system that innovates over time. It was never designed to be reductionist and originalist. We have to make sure that happens. So you can check that out, and then I can focus on other stuff here at the Awake Space. So, all right, let's do some patron shout outs, and then I'm going to talk about the full moon in Aries and a little bit more about what we can do this week, right? A little bit more about what we can do this week on the inside, and because if we take care of the inside, it helps us take care of the outside. Let's get going. Alrighty. Every single week I give shout outs to our newest patrons, and without you, there is no podcast. So big thank you. I don't read out everybody because it would take a whole podcast episode, because we have like 2,400 supporting members. There's 6,700 members, which includes our vibing and free members. So thank you all for your support, whether it's just giving good vibes and energy or supporting us financially. You help us keep this sponsor-free, ad-free, and continue to allow us to make not just the public podcast, but also patron-only exclusive content that helps you self-actualize, self-realize, and understand yourself from a spiritual, physical, emotional, psychological level, with astrology as the cornerstone. Alrighty. We've got Amber, Vanessa, Eric, Butter Chicken, Megan, Twunk, Stacy, Maddie Moon, Laurel, Jennifer, Peach Pom Pom, Ellen, Linda, Kimberly, Vicky, Luz Maria, Lindsay, James, Alexander, Tiramisu, Amber, Brittany, Jim, Elizabeth, Matilda, A Beautiful Heart, Mostly Gemini, Claire, Jay Barrera, Nancy, Lindsay, Michelle, Allie, Julia, Good Witch 73, Jaleel, No Way Jose, Effie, Brinley, Jennifer, Sassy Frassy 248, Autumn, Jen, Vic, MD, Ava, Gina, Hilga, Alicia, Soul Music Heals, Jen, Jess, Sheridan, Kat, Deidre, Linda, Mary, Esma, Tete, Tatiana, Intuitively Beth, Elizabeth, Danny, Sarah, Emily, Val, Marcy, Stephanie, Rob, Nikki. And I just did it again. I just lost my place. I'm not editing this. I'm not going to. Let's see. Mostly Gemini, Claire, Nancy, Lindsay, Michelle, Allie, Julia, Goodwood. Oh, I already read those. Never mind, you got 2 shout outs. I'm still not editing this. There we go. Vic, MD, Ava, Gina, Hilga, Alicia, Soul Music Hills, Jen, Jess, Sheridan, Kat, Deidre, Linda, Mary, Esma, Tete, Tatiana, Intuitively Beth, Elizabeth, Danny, Sarah, Emily, Val, Marzi, Stephanie, Rob, Nikki, Mina, Tamara, Patience, Brusa, Manny, Linnea, Essa, Jordan, Amanda, Riley, Ashley, Kai, Patricia, Iced Mocha Latte, 5 Dream Flux, Katie, Shanisha, Amy, Marissa, Rumination, Redacted, Kylene, Mel, Paige, Sarah, Caramujo, Saf, Jewel Sphere, Stephanie, Megan, Bernice, Sierra, Neva, Zen Void, Kelsey, Morgan, Althea, Anne, the Ghostarian, Jessica, Maggie, Zorelia, Tea in the Graveyard, Asia, Elizabeth, Vale Crescent, Narkara, Trissy, Billy, Jet, Cassandra, Victoria, Laura, Jordan, Jenny, Leah, Ariel, Megan, Luca, May, Caroline, Laura, Jen, Alyssa, Morgan, Paradox Priestess, Anna, LB, Just Us 3, Danny, Amanda, Albano, Nick, Susan, Rachel, Megumi, Joanna, or Jonna, Colleen, Christina, Roxana, G, Ally or Allie, Glitch Paladin, Natalie, Bertha Gab 44, Sasha, Jackie, Kathy, Keisha, Aaron, Emily, Cindy, and Looney Tutor. That's a great way to end that, but I ain't editing. Yes, I repeated some because I lost my freaking place. But you know what? I want you to have an organic experience. So there we go. All right, let's get on with the show. Let's talk about that full moon starting our week off. And a few other things, shall we? All right, we've got a big full moon starting the week off. If you're on the West Coast, it happens late tonight, Monday night, October 6th, or early hours of Tuesday morning if you're on the East Coast. So like 2:30-ish, something like that. I don't want to look up the time. I just want to get this podcast episode done. Boy, isn't that an Aries type feeling that just move along. Don't think, don't pause for action. Just dive into the fray. This full moon is a culmination. All full moons are. And when we're looking at Aries, it is the concept of self, the I am nature. And too often people speak negatively when it comes to I am. I am tired. I am exhausted. I'm weak. I'm sad. I'm traumatized. I'm a victim, whatever it is. And I'm not making light of those feelings. Okay. We all can feel that way at different times in the day, let alone our lives. But our I am nature is powerful. You know, you probably all heard the axiom, I think, therefore I am, right? And we could be, I am, therefore I think. I am consciousness made manifest. I am spirit made matter. We have the power with our self-concept, with our understanding of self, to determine how we show up in our day-to-day. And this full moon in Aries gives a nice emboldening energy on the individual to understand the power inherent in who you are. If you weren't powerful, no one would try to oppress you. Okay? Period. If you weren't a threat, no one would try to subjugate you. There you go. That's how powerful you are. You live in certain people's heads. Okay? Just your very existence. And so this isn't about being large and in charge. It's not about being full of fire and wanting to go hit people, although you might. Sometimes we do. It's a natural thing for humans. Doesn't make you a bad person. False morality is far more of a problem, okay, than being honest about our feelings. You don't always have to go tell people your honest feelings, but you can be aware of them. This full moon is in the outer world will probably be incendiary. And it's, I start off the what's in the headlines section, then patrons, you guys will get to see it. In fact, I'll put it out for deep dive Sunday night, and then patrons at the $5 level and up will get it Monday. Okay. So deep dives is 15 and up. But anyway, so don't freak out $5 levels when you see the post. Okay. Or if you did freak out, don't worry about it. Tomorrow, Monday, it'll come out. But Sunday night, I'll put it up. I will have put it up. I need to speak like in the future instead of past. Anyway, so, the outer world, what's in the headlines, it starts out with the moon in Aries is running around chanting red rum, red rum. And if you've ever watched The Shining, you'll know what I'm talking about. Murder, except backwards. It's dicey out in the outer world, but that doesn't mean our inner world has to be compromised. There are a few people who control information on a mass scale. in the world. In the world. And they all have agendas. People are like, when did the news, get so propaganda-y? And I'm like, yeah, always. Always. Look up William Randall Hearst. You look up yellow journalism. Okay, the fourth estate, blah, 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 being the noble search for truth. There's been little windows, but people will meet their agenda. That's why freedom of the press is in the First Amendment. It has nothing to do with giving free information. Freedom of the press means that you can criticize the government as a media entity and not face jail time. That's what it was for. That's the history of it. So I bring up all this to say is regardless of outer circumstances, you can have a good day. You can have a good week. You can have a good month. It can be really, really creative. And if you're in the Patreon, I'll be going over how to use that full moon energy, how to be receptive to it. One of the ways we're receptive is getting out of the way. Okay, because we almost always are in our own way of being receptive. So if we're telling the story of, I'm exhausted, I can't do this anymore, I hate people, I hate this timeline, I hate it here, I want to be done, I can't take anymore. You do that, you can't see the good stuff coming. Okay? You can't live your life by the headlines. And the headlines are written to get you to click. But most people don't read the whole article. It's just like a video. I can make, I look at my listens on here and people requested an hour episode. Okay. I tried to make it half an hour and people are like, no, I take you to the gym. And I'm like, okay, great. But I can see the percentage of listeners who go all the way through to the end of the podcast. Okay. I don't make money on the listens. I don't make money on the listen through. That's not the model. We are listener supported and I appreciate it. And I realize people have lives and they get busy. But think of that. Our distractibility makes us easy to manipulate. And with this full moon in Aries, which we're kind of lucky isn't in a square with Jupiter, because that would have been a lot. So the universe gave us, a little gimme there. It's still a pretty big full moon, but it could be worse. So there's going to be stuff in the outer world, and we have to manage our inner world. Okay. Our inner sense of self. And by recognizing resistance patterns, it's not always the big step. Like by the time you're on the floor in the fetal position, you've experienced a pileup of resistance. It's usually little irritations. They're minor little things. Somebody asks you and something and doesn't say please. You do something for somebody and they don't say thank you, and you kind of grin and bear it. You're taken for granted. And maybe it's your kids, maybe it's a spouse, maybe it's a boss, and maybe you woke up on the wrong side of the bed and you're a little more sensitive, right? Maybe you're having tech issues and it's just, it starts out with you use the wrong email to log into something. You spend an hour trying to figure out, what the problem was, only to find out you used the wrong email. Those irritations build up because, as you're irritated 15 minutes in, you knock your coffee over and it almost spills on your keyboard, but it doesn't spill on your keyboard. And how are you going to see anything good happening when we're in irritation? We can't. Our consciousness cannot hold both spaces at the same time. And I'm not saying don't be irritated. Those days where all the little things add up, those are rough. They're rough. And they're a clue to make a change, to stop, slow down, take care of the immediate problem, like the coffee that got spilled, and then take a walk, take a break, go breathe, move the body, Okay. I spent the last week walking someone really, really close to me, a good family friend, who's been dealing with a very, very serious business situation. And the anxiety was off the charts. And this young man, again, very close family friend, nobody, not in astrology, completely separate, really has been going through it. And his anxiety was spinning him, and he was resistant to going to therapy. And which is fine, you can't force people into it. But their sleep was disrupted, their eating was disrupted, and they were in some sour shape. And so I worked with them all week because, again, it's a very close family friend. I've known this person and walked them through quite a bit in life. I'm like a surrogate mom, you could say, to this person. And they started listing off all the things they needed to do, like it was a run-on sentence. I have to do this and this and this and this, and furthermore, and however, and blah, 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 blah. And I said, wow, that's an awful lot to think about that way. How about we make it into a list instead of a run-on sentence? And they were like, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, well, you have access to this, whiteboard you could use, and resistance. I can't, blah, 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 blah. And I said, all right, let me be an accountability partner with you. Is it okay if I text you the action steps? Sure. Okay. Step 1, that action. Step 2, the next action. And I said to this young person, I said, I've been right in your shoes, where everything seemed equally important, all the things happening at all the same time. And what I've learned to do is not think of it as a paragraph, but as just step 1, step 2, step 3, and further on. So what's the most important thing that needs to be taken care of right now? He gave me the answer. I texted step 1. And I said, we're going to make the rest of the list, but all I want you to think about is that one thing. Just do that one thing. And wouldn't you know it, his voice got less tight. He stopped speaking as rapidly. His breathing became more normal because we were on the phone, and I could hear his gears just whirring. And so we walked through the process, and a problem that had been building for over a year was able to be taken care of in a matter of days because he got out of his head and took action. And one of the things I kept repeating, action is the antidote to anxiety. So when you're, and you can say, oh, but I am always up in my head. I've always been this way. This is just how I do things. I was traumatized. I went through these things. Most of us have experienced trauma in some way, but if we use it to define and describe who we are and allow it to run our lives, we are further oppressing ourselves. So we can sit and use the anxiety as an excuse to further oppress ourselves, or we can do an antidote, which is to take action. And that is what the Aries Full Moon is all about, receiving the knowingness of the actions we can take in the world. Okay. You can't think about all of it at the same time. That's overwhelming. Break it down. The first thing that needs to be done. The second thing that needs to be done. The third thing. I've been telling people in the magazine even to take inventory. Take inventory of your skill sets, your knowledge base, your talents. I don't care if you're good at playing the nose flute. It's a skill. You might be able to use it someday, even if it's to entertain a toddler. It's still a skill, and it still has value. Okay. It's really, really important to come from a strength-based perspective right now. Because there is a lot of outside noise designed to make you feel oppressed, apathetic, disempowered. And with this Aries full moon, it's saying, do it. You can do it. I was going to say, do it, lady, but I had that for the Pisces moon. Do a little chit. If you haven't, go look up chit. CHIT. Hilarious. But this Aries full moon is about not just taking action in the world, but being the action. You are the action. You are the solution. So often we've been trained to see ourselves as the problem, but you're not. You're the solution. They wouldn't spend so much money on making you feel, apathy, like you don't have any power, like apathy doesn't mean you don't care. It usually means you care a lot and feel impotent to move into action. It's the, fuck it, I give up. It's the not having power. But you have so much. And that's why they're working so hard to make sure you don't. All right. So find some good tunes, chill out a little bit, and tune in to what you actually bring to the table of your life, your own table. What table are you building? What are you giving? And somebody asked me on TikTok, like, with all the crap going on, how do we plan forward? Well, you can't, when we talk about long-range strategic planning, right now, long-term planning is 6 to 8 months. Not because we don't have a future past that, but because massive systemic change is moving so rapidly that we can just about look 6 months ahead and do our best. Everything's changing. And it's not the first time everything has changed in human history, even in our lifetimes. There are people who took typing in high school. And yeah, we use it because we use keyboards, but we were on typewriters. We had landlines. My great-grandmother saw the use of the telephone come into play, where everybody had a phone. When she was born in 1899, that did not happen. She saw her first car, automobile, at 6 years old in 1905. Coming down a dirt road in Nebraska. And she didn't know what it was. She thought it was a dragon because her brothers were reading her Ivanhoe. She thought it was a dragon. It's not. It was just a really loud vehicle that kicked up a lot of dust, right? From there, she saw the first flights, World War I, World War II, jet planes, international air travel. All of that came into being by the time she was in her 50s. She loved progress, although she couldn't understand why anyone would build on good farmland. Like, why are they putting houses on farmland? Where are people supposed to grow their food? She would ask. I see this because a lot of people have this selfish perspective that they're the only ones who've lived through a hard time. Being physical is a hard time. It's just hard to be physical matter. That's why we're so celebrated by our guidance. That's why we're so celebrated by the spiritual family that stays around us, whether it's our ancestors or some people might consider it an angel or ascended master or whatever you want to call it. I don't care what you call it. The spirits around us. We are celebrated and encouraged at all times. Because what we're doing is really brave, being in physical bodies. Even if we're afraid, even if we've struggled, even if we've suffered. because you get up and you take one more step and one more breath. And that's how we do life. It's not about perfection. It's not about everything being a good Instagram story. It's about getting up and taking care of business every single day. So there's that. I tell you. Alrighty. I'm going to go through the full moon in Aries for patrons and go house by house. So if you want to know what's in it for you personally, you can head over to the Patreon and get that on Monday afternoon. That will release because, we got to put out I hate it when I have to put out a whole bunch of information all on a Monday. Messes up my schedule, but c'est la vie. We're going to live with that. All right. Rounding off the podcast, we're going to talk a little bit else about what's coming up this week. Well, I'm super excited for this week because I'm going to start doing some lectures with the astrology crew to give an updated version of planets and aspect. We're going to go through the planets starting with the sun, which is, yes, a luminary, but astrologers know that, and we call everything planets because it's shorthand, because explaining this takes too long. Anyway, super excited to go through that. If you are in the astrology crew, don't get upset if you don't make every lecture, because some of them might happen at midnight my time. Okay, it's when I can get time to do the recordings amongst all the other things I'm doing, because I've wanted to give a progressive evolutionary lens to our interpretations of planets in aspect and planets in transit, and just widening the scope. And we talked a little bit, or I wrote about that in the Patreon. And so if you make them, you make them. If you don't, the recording will go in the library. That's that simple. Okay. If you're not a patron, you'll be able to get these lectures purchasing them. Okay. Or if you're not at the astrology crew level. Okay. And no, I don't have a schedule for it. It's never going to work if I do it that way. So this way I'll get that body of work out there. Okay. And that's exciting. So I'll start that this week. This week, kind of the intensity is going to be a lot at a Monday. It's a Monday. Okay. So, and watch out for the weather, because I think the weather's going to be a little topsy-turvy as we go through. It's a crazy time on the planet. I tell you. I think we're going to see more psychosis out in the world too. You got to be careful, and don't think ChatGPT is a source for spiritual matters. It's, if you wanted to use it as a research tool, you want to have it like cite its sources. But remember, it uses first person when you can ask it not to, and to use a neutral tone. But it's not sentient. It's not cognizant. It is a computer program regurgitating information. So Monday, this is what we've got going on. We've got Mercury popping into Scorpio. Of course, we have the Aries full moon. The 7th, we have Mercury square Pluto. It's going to be really easy to get into arguments, and words will be able to kick off some really volatile things. So before you get into it with somebody, take a step back. Ask yourself, why am I feeling so vulnerable? I need to defend myself. Why am I having to get into it? It's not about being above it, but it is understanding that words have consequences. We could see some accidents out in the world as well. So, and it could have to do with like the government shutdown in the United States and air traffic control being maybe a little bitter about not getting paid. That could be that. We got Venus sextile Jupiter, though, on the 8th. And that's really nice energy. That's do it, lady. You can do it, lady. That's good energy. So we have Venus in Virgo and it's sextile Jupiter in Cancer. I watch a lot of people come and tell me they adopted a cat or a dog. It's really creative though. And so this is a really good time to not just clean your space, but decorate it and make it feel cozy and homey. This is a good time to allow yourself to be filled with inspiration. These are all ways we can use this energy. You can just put your phone away for an hour. Yes, you can. And then, decorate. Take, maybe it's time to put the Halloween decorations out, or maybe it's time to go shopping for them, But there's that. Venus is opposite Saturn on the 11th. That's also pretty creative energy. We're going to hear a lot about systems. There's systems checking misuse of authority around that. And then October 13th, we have Venus moving into Libra. It will oppose Neptune and Pluto goes direct. And that is next Monday. And I think we'll see some things heat up in the world. I just do. We'll probably talk about that a little bit on the 11th when Matilda and I do our program. But this is probably that thing we're all feeling, that there's something coming. Okay. Well, and I want you to think about this logically. Look at the buildup we've got going on. People are frustrated. The pots are boiling almost to spilling over. Nobody's going to turn down the heat right now. They're just not. And when Venus moves into Libra and is in opposition to Neptune on a global scale, this is people calling bullshit about the injustice and wanting things to come from a solid force. By the way, there should be some killer music releases with that as well. Pluto direct is going to give power back to the people. Pluto direct is going to give power to the people in a way we haven't seen for a little while. So that's pretty cool. So that next week starts off with a little bit of a bang. This week can be very creative. There's probably some catalyzing events out in the world, but it doesn't mean your experience, your world is going to be awful. It doesn't have to be. Okay? All right. So I'm going to give you a big hug. I'm going to remind you that you can shake out and wiggle, and you can get out of your head by wiggling your toes. It's one of my favorite grounding exercises. It's so simple. You stop. Okay. So your head is just going in circles. I have this, blah, 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 blah. I have this thing to do. I have that thing. Remember the run-on sentence of priority, right? And you stop and you take a deep breath. Just growl it out. Laugh a minute at yourself for being silly. Okay. And then wiggle your toes. You cannot be in your head and wiggle your toes at the same time. You just can't. You got to pay attention. You can't. It'll stop you from popping up into your head. So wiggle your toes. Okay. You can have a great week. And any frustration could just be a sign and a signal that you need to do something differently. Doesn't mean you need to give up. It just means maybe you need to organize your time a little differently. Maybe you need to give yourself more credit. Maybe the reason why you don't feel respected is you're not respecting yourself. Oh, snap. Okay. Give yourself what you want to receive this week. Give yourself the respect. Give yourself the credit. Give yourself the validation. Give yourself the recognition. And you're going to surf this cosmic tide like a pro. All right. I'm Laurie Rivers. I want to thank you for listening to the Awake Space Astrology Podcast. Please do check out the show notes And next week, well, next week is next week, and we'll talk about that. We've got some interesting power moves next week, besides it kicking off with a bang, but power to the people in the best of ways next week. So make sure you tune in to next week's episode. I'm Laurie Rivers, your host. And remember, you can take those inspirations and move them into your aspirations so you're effective in your own life and in the world this week.